The pen scratched across the paper with a sound that felt like nails on a chalkboard. Naomi watched her husband's hand move with deliberate slowness, savoring each stroke as he signed his name on the divorce papers. Trevor didn't even glance at her. He just smiled that new smile, the one that had appeared 3 days ago at his father's funeral, right after the will reading. "All done," Trevor said, sliding the papers across the polished mahogany desk. His voice carried a lightness she hadn't heard in years, certainly not during their marriage. "You're free to go, Naomi. Free to be someone else's problem." Naomi's fingers trembled as she reached for the papers. She couldn't quite believe this was happening, not really. 5 years of marriage, dissolved in 20 minutes at a lawyer's office on a Tuesday afternoon. The lawyer, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses, looked uncomfortable as he collected the documents. "Mrs. Patterson, you'll need to sign here as well," the lawyer said quietly, his eyes filled with something that looked like pity. "It's Ms. Brooks now," Trevor corrected with a laugh. "Or it will be soon enough. She won't be a Patterson anymore." Naomi picked up the pen. Her hand shook, but she forced herself to sign. Naomi Brooks. Her maiden name looked strange after 5 years of writing Patterson. Strange but somehow right, like slipping into an old comfortable sweater after wearing something too tight for too long. "There," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. "It's done." Trevor stood up, straightening his expensive new suit. The suit she didn't recognize, bought sometime in the last 3 days. "Goodbye, Naomi. Thanks for the memories, I guess." He walked out without looking back. The door clicked shut behind him with a finality that made Naomi's chest tighten. She sat there, frozen, staring at the wood grain of the desk. "Ms. Brooks," the lawyer said gently. "Are you all right? Can I get you some water?" "I'm fine," Naomi whispered. But she wasn't fine. She was sitting in a lawyer's office, newly divorced, with nowhere to go and no one to call. She was the opposite of fine. The lawyer handed her a tissue. She hadn't realized she was crying. "I'm sorry this happened to you," he said. "I've seen many divorces in my career, but this one feels particularly cruel." Naomi wiped her eyes and stood up. Her legs felt weak, but she made them work. "Thank you for your time," she said, gathering her purse. "I should go." She walked out of the office building into the bright afternoon sun. People rushed past her on the sidewalk, everyone going somewhere with purpose. Naomi stood there, blinking in the light, trying to remember where she'd parked her car. Their car. No, his car now. She'd taken the bus here because Trevor had already changed the locks on their house and taken both vehicles. The bus ride home to her sister's apartment felt endless. Naomi pressed her forehead against the cool window and let herself remember the funeral. It had been 3 days ago, but it felt like 3 years. Robert Patterson had died suddenly of a heart attack. He was only 62, healthy and active right up until the end. The funeral was enormous, hundreds of people filling the church to pay their respects to the beloved businessman and philanthropist. Naomi had stood beside Trevor in the front row, holding his hand, trying to be supportive even though Robert had never been warm to her. Trevor had been unemployed for the past 3 years. Before that, he'd worked in his father's company, but Robert had let him go after discovering Trevor had been falsifying expense reports. The betrayal had cut deep, and Robert had told Trevor he needed to learn responsibility and integrity before he could return to the family business. Naomi had supported them on her salary as a high school art teacher. It wasn't much, but she'd made it work. She'd taken on extra tutoring jobs in the evenings and sold her paintings at local markets on weekends. Trevor had promised he was looking for work, but mostly he'd played video games and complained about how his father had ruined his life. She'd loved him anyway. Or she'd tried to. She'd believed marriage meant standing by your partner through hard times. She'd believed he would eventually find his way, become the man she'd fallen in love with during college when he'd been charming and ambitious. After the funeral service, everyone had gathered at the Patterson family estate for the wake. Naomi had helped serve food and comfort grieving relatives, many of whom barely acknowledged her presence. She'd always been the outsider, the poor girl Trevor had married against his family's wishes. The will reading had been scheduled for later that afternoon, just for immediate family. Naomi had been surprised when the lawyer included her, gesturing for her to sit beside Trevor. Trevor's mother, Patricia, had given Naomi a cold look but said nothing. The lawyer had read through various bequests to charities and distant relatives. Then he'd reached the main portion of the estate. "To my son, Trevor Michael Patterson, I leave the entirety of my business holdings, investment portfolio, and personal assets, totaling approximately $310 million. The room had gone completely silent. Naomi had felt Trevor go rigid beside her. $310 million. The number was so large it didn't seem real. However, the lawyer had continued, this inheritance comes with certain conditions outlined in a separate document that I'll review with Trevor privately. Trevor hadn't seemed to hear that last part. His eyes had glazed over, his mind clearly calculating what that much money meant. No more depending on Naomi's teacher salary. No more humble apartment. No more waiting for his father's approval. The private meeting with the lawyer had lasted 20 minutes. When Trevor emerged, his whole demeanor had changed. He'd looked at Naomi with an expression she'd never seen before, something cold and evaluating, like she was a piece of furniture he was considering throwing away. At dinner that evening, back at their small apartment, Trevor had been quiet. He'd pushed food around his plate, barely eating. Naomi had tried to talk to him about the funeral, about his father, about how he was feeling. He'd given one-word answers until she'd finally given up and gone to bed early. The next morning she'd woken to find Trevor packing his clothes. "What are you doing?" she'd asked, confused. "Leaving," he'd said simply. "I'm moving into the estate. My estate now." "Okay," Naomi had said slowly. "When should I pack? Do you want to move this weekend?" Trevor had laughed, a harsh sound without humor. "You're not coming, Naomi? I'm done with this marriage. I'm done with you." She'd stood there in her pajamas trying to process his words. "What are you talking about? Trevor, your father just died. You're grieving. You're not thinking clearly." "I'm thinking clearly for the first time in years," he'd said, zipping up his suitcase. "I settled for you because I thought I'd never have anything better. But now I have $300 million. I can have anyone I want. Why would I choose you?" The words had hit her like physical blows. "Trevor, please. This is crazy. We've been married for 5 years. We took vows. Vows I regret every single day," he'd said, looking at her with something close to disgust. "You were convenient when I had nothing. Now I have everything and you're just in the way. Is there someone else?" The question had escaped before she could stop it. Trevor had smiled, that new cruel smile. "Her name is Candace. She's beautiful, sophisticated, everything you're not. And now I can actually afford her." He picked up his bags and walked out, leaving Naomi standing in their bedroom, her world crumbling around her. She'd spent that whole day crying, unable to believe this was happening. Surely he would come back. Surely he would realize he was making a mistake. But he hadn't come back. Instead, his lawyer had called the next day to schedule the divorce proceedings. Trevor wanted it done quickly and quietly. He was offering her nothing, no alimony, no property settlement. Since they'd never had any assets worth dividing, there was nothing to fight over. He knew she couldn't afford a lawyer to contest it. Now sitting on the bus, Naomi felt numb. The crying had stopped somewhere around the 3rd day. Now she just felt empty, hollowed out. She'd given 5 years to a man who'd thrown her away the moment he didn't need her anymore. The bus lurched to a stop, and Naomi got off, walking the 2 blocks to her sister's apartment building. Her sister Rachel had taken her in without question, clearing out her spare room and making space in her closet. Rachel was 6 years older, a nurse who worked night shifts at the hospital. She'd never liked Trevor, had warned Naomi not to marry him. She'd been too kind to say, "I told you so," but Naomi had seen it in her eyes. Naomi climbed the 3 flights of stairs to Rachel's apartment. Her key stuck in the lock for a moment before turning. Inside, the apartment was quiet. Rachel was at work. Naomi dropped her purse on the couch and stood in the middle of the living room, unsure what to do with herself. She should eat something. She should call the school and let them know she'd be back to work tomorrow. She should start looking for her own apartment, something she could afford on a teacher's salary. She should do a lot of things. Instead, she walked to the spare bedroom and lay down on the narrow bed, staring at the ceiling. The water stain in the corner looked like a rabbit. Or maybe a cloud. She stared at it until her eyes blurred and the shape didn't look like anything at all. Her phone buzzed. She almost didn't check it, but habit made her reach for it. A text from an unknown number. "Just so you know, Trevor and I are very happy together. He says you were boring in bed anyway. Enjoy your pathetic life. Candace." Naomi stared at the message. She should feel something. Anger, hurt, humiliation. But she just felt tired. So incredibly tired. She turned off her phone and closed her eyes. Tomorrow she would figure out how to put her life back together. Tomorrow she would be strong. But today she would just let herself fall apart. The morning sun filtered through the thin curtains of Rachel's spare bedroom, painting stripes across the worn carpet. Naomi woke up with a headache and a mouth that tasted like cotton. For a blissful moment, she forgot everything that had happened. Then reality crashed back in, and she wanted to pull the covers over her head and disappear. But she couldn't. She had to go to work. She had to face her students and pretend everything was fine. She had to start building a life that didn't revolve around Trevor Patterson and his broken promises. Rachel had left a note on the kitchen counter. Coffee in the pot. Bagels in the fridge. You're stronger than you know. Call me if you need anything. Love you. R. Naomi poured herself coffee and sat at the small kitchen table. Through the window she could see the building across the street, its brick face covered in climbing ivy. A woman was hanging laundry on a fire escape, colorful shirts and dresses flapping in the breeze. Such a normal scene. Such a normal day for everyone but her. Her phone was still off. She wasn't ready to face whatever messages might be waiting. Instead, she focused on getting ready for work. She showered, put on a blue blouse and black pants, and applied makeup to hide the dark circles under her eyes. The woman in the mirror looked almost normal. Almost. The bus to school was crowded with morning commuters. Naomi stood near the back, holding onto a pole, letting the rhythm of the moving bus rock her gently. She tried to mentally prepare for the day ahead. Her students would ask where she'd been. She'd missed 2 days of school for the funeral and its aftermath. She would have to tell them something. Jefferson High School was a large brick building that had seen better days. Budget cuts meant peeling paint and outdated textbooks, but the students were eager and the teachers dedicated. Naomi loved her job, loved watching her students discover their artistic talents. It was the one part of her life that still made sense. Ms. Brooks, Principal Gomez called as Naomi entered the building. Welcome back. How are you holding up? Naomi forced a smile. I'm doing all right. Thank you for asking. Principal Gomez was a kind woman in her 50s with silver streaks in her black hair. She studied Naomi with concern. If you need more time, we can arrange it. Mrs. Chun can continue covering your classes. No, I'm fine. Really. I need to get back to normal. Whatever normal meant now. Her classroom was on the second floor, facing east so it got good morning light. Naomi unlocked the door and stepped inside, breathing in the familiar smell of paint and clay and possibility. Student artwork covered the walls, bright splashes of color and imagination. This was her sanctuary. She was arranging supplies when the first students began arriving. Miss Brooks, you're back, shouted Amara, a talented sophomore who specialized in watercolors. We missed you. I missed you too, Naomi said and meant it. The day passed in a blur of lessons and demonstrations. Naomi taught classes on perspective drawing, helped a struggling freshman understand color theory, and supervised the advanced painting group. She fell into the rhythm of teaching, letting it carry her through. 4 hours at a time, she almost forgot about the divorce. But lunch period brought reality crashing back. Naomi sat in the teacher's lounge, picking at a sandwich she'd bought from the cafeteria, when Mrs. Palmer from the English department sat down across from her. I heard about your divorce, Mrs. Palmer said bluntly. She was an older woman, close to retirement, known for her directness. My daughter told me she saw the filing in the public records. Naomi's face flushed. That was fast. Small town even if it is a big city, Mrs. Palmer said, taking a bite of her apple. For what it's worth, I never liked that husband of yours. Any man who lets his wife support him for years while he plays video games isn't worth the powder to blow him up. Despite everything, Naomi almost smiled. You don't hold back, do you? At my age, there's no point in dancing around things. You're better off without him. You'll see that eventually. Would she? Right now, Naomi just felt hollowed out. But she nodded anyway, not wanting to explain how she'd devoted 5 years to a man who discarded her the moment he got money. How she'd believed in him when no one else did, and how he'd repaid her faith with cruelty. After school, Naomi stayed late to clean her classroom and prepare for the next day's lessons. She didn't want to go back to Rachel's apartment yet, didn't want to face the emptiness of the evening. When she finally locked up and left the building, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Her phone was still off. She turned it on as she waited for the bus, watching messages flood in. Most were from Rachel checking on her. A few were from other family members who'd heard about the divorce. And 3 were from Trevor. Her finger hovered over the delete button, but curiosity got the better of her. She opened the first message. Naomi, I need you to sign some additional paperwork. My lawyer will send it over. The second message, also, I'll need you to return anything of mine that you took from the house. I have a list. The third message, Candace thinks you might try to cause trouble. Don't. You won't win. Naomi stared at the messages, feeling a spark of something she hadn't felt in days. Anger. Not the hot, explosive kind but something cold and clear. How dare he? How dare he act like she was the problem, like she was some obstacle to be managed. She typed back, I don't have anything of yours. I left with my clothes and personal items. And I have no intention of causing trouble. I just want to move on with my life. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. The reply came almost immediately. Good. Stay out of my way and I'll stay out of yours. Naomi blocked his number. She should have done it days ago. She didn't owe Trevor Patterson anything, not even the courtesy of reading his messages. The bus arrived and she climbed on, finding a seat near the window. As the city passed by outside, Naomi thought about her marriage, really thought about it for the first time since Trevor had left. When had things gone wrong? Looking back, she could see the cracks that had always been there. Trevor's sense of entitlement. His resentment when his father cut him off. The way he'd let her carry all the financial and emotional weight of their relationship without appreciation or reciprocation. She'd made excuses for him. She'd told herself marriage was about supporting each other through difficult times. She'd believed that if she just loved him enough, worked hard enough, was patient enough, things would get better. But they never had. And now she understood that they never would have. Trevor hadn't changed when he got money. The money had just revealed who he'd always been underneath. Selfish, cruel, and fundamentally uninterested in being a true partner. The realization didn't make the pain go away, but it did clarify things. She wasn't grieving the loss of the man she'd married. She was grieving the loss of the man she'd thought he could become. And that man had never existed except in her imagination. When Naomi got back to Rachel's apartment, her sister was home early from her shift. Rachel took one look at Naomi's face and pulled her into a hug. Bad day? Rachel asked. Actually, Naomi said, it was better than I expected. I'm starting to realize some things. They ordered Chinese food and ate it on the couch, watching a comedy that wasn't particularly funny but provided enough distraction. Rachel told stories about difficult patients and hospital drama, making Naomi laugh despite herself. I need to find my own place, Naomi said during a commercial break. I can't impose on you forever. You're not imposing, Rachel said firmly. But if you want your own space, we can start looking this weekend. Nothing fancy, just something affordable and safe. Affordable is the key word, Naomi said wryly. I'm going to be living on a teacher's salary with no backup plan. You'll manage. You always do. Rachel squeezed her hand. You're the strongest person I know, even if you don't see it yet. That night, lying in bed, Naomi thought about strength. She'd never considered herself particularly strong. She'd always been the peacemaker, the one who compromised and accommodated. But maybe Rachel was right. Maybe surviving the past 5 years with Trevor, supporting them both, keeping faith when everyone else had given up on him, maybe that had required a kind of strength she hadn't recognized. And now she would need a different kind of strength. The strength to build a life alone, to trust herself, to believe she deserved better than what Trevor had given her. She pulled out her laptop and started researching apartments in her price range. Most were small, many in questionable neighborhoods, but she found a few possibilities. A studio apartment near the school caught her eye. It was tiny, just one room with a kitchenette and bathroom, but it had large windows facing south. Good light for painting. Naomi bookmarked the listing and closed her laptop. Tomorrow she would call to schedule a viewing. Tomorrow she would take another step toward independence. Tomorrow she would keep moving forward, even if she wasn't sure where she was going. Before she turned off the light, she looked at her sketchbook, which she'd rescued from the apartment. She hadn't drawn anything in months, too tired from work and too drained from her marriage. But now, on impulse, she picked up a pencil and began to draw. The lines came slowly at first, then faster. She didn't know what she was drawing until it took shape. A bird with broken wings struggling to fly. But in the background, just sketched lightly, other birds soared free. Naomi looked at the drawing for a long moment, then set down her pencil. She wasn't ready to fly yet. But maybe, eventually she would be. 2 weeks crawled by. Naomi fell into a new routine. Teaching during the day, apartment hunting in the evenings, and trying to rebuild a life from scratch. She'd viewed the studio apartment with the good light and signed a lease. She would move in at the end of the month. Rachel had helped her buy basic furniture from thrift stores and garage sales. A small couch that was slightly worn but comfortable. A bed frame someone was giving away for free. A kitchen table with mismatched chairs. None of it matched, but it was hers, and that made it beautiful. At school, her students had noticed the change in her. "Miss Brooks, you seem different," Amara had said one afternoon. Sadder, but also kind of stronger. Naomi had smiled at that. "Sometimes sad and strong go together," she'd said. "You can feel both at once." She'd started drawing again, filling her sketchbook with images that poured out of her. Broken chains, closed doors with keys lying in front of them, flowers growing through concrete. Her art had always been pretty and pleasant, the kind of thing people bought at craft fairs to hang in their bathrooms. But now it was raw and honest and somehow more real. On Thursday afternoon, 2 weeks and 3 days after the divorce was finalized, Naomi's phone rang during her lunch break. A known number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Ms. Brooks? A man's voice, professional and polite. This is Gerald Harrison from Harrison & Associates. I'm the attorney handling your former father-in-law's estate. Naomi's heart sank. What now? More papers to sign? Some final insult from Trevor? Yes, this is Naomi Brooks. Ms. Brooks, I need to schedule a meeting with you at your earliest convenience. It's regarding Robert Patterson's will. There are some matters we need to discuss. I don't understand, Naomi said slowly. The will was already read. Trevor inherited everything. I'm not part of the family anymore. Nevertheless, there are provisions in the will that concern you directly. Mr. Harrison's voice was carefully neutral. I can't discuss the details over the phone. Would tomorrow afternoon work? Say 3 o'clock at my office. Naomi's mind raced. Provisions that concerned her? That didn't make sense. Robert had barely tolerated her while he was alive. Why would he leave her anything in his will? Unless this was some kind of trick from Trevor, some way to squeeze something more out of her. Miss Brooks? Are you still there? Yes, sorry. Tomorrow at 3 should work. Can you at least tell me what this is about? I'm afraid I can't, not until you're here in person. But I assure you it's important. He paused. And Miss Brooks, you may want to bring a notepad. There will be a lot of information to process. After she hung up, Naomi sat staring at her phone. What could this possibly be about? She tried to remember if Robert had ever given her any indication that he cared about her, but she came up empty. He'd been polite but distant, clearly disappointed that his son had married beneath their social standing. The rest of the school day passed in a blur. Naomi taught her classes on autopilot, her mind spinning with possibilities. Maybe Robert had left her something small, a token gesture. Maybe there was paperwork she needed to sign to officially sever her connection to the Patterson family. Maybe Trevor was trying to sue her for something, though she couldn't imagine what. That evening, she told Rachel about the call over dinner. Rachel looked skeptical. That's weird. Why would Robert's lawyer want to see you now? You're divorced. You're done with all of them. I know. But I have to go, right? I have to find out what this is about. Do you want me to come with you? Rachel offered. I could switch my shift. Naomi shook her head. No, I'll be fine. It's probably nothing. Just some formality I need to take care of. But that night, lying in bed in the spare room she'd been calling home, Naomi couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change. Mr. Harrison's voice had been so careful, so measured. This wasn't about some minor detail. This was important. She tried to sleep but kept waking up, her mind churning through scenarios. By morning, she had dark circles under her eyes again and felt jittery from lack of rest. School dragged on forever. Naomi watched the clock, counting down the hours until 3. Her students picked up on her distraction. Ms. Brooks, are you okay? Asked James, a quiet junior who rarely spoke in class. You seem nervous. I'm fine, James. Just have an appointment after school that I'm thinking about. Is it bad? Like a doctor thing? Naomi managed a smile. No, nothing like that. Just a meeting with a lawyer. That sounds scary, James said with the blunt honesty of teenagers. A little, Naomi admitted. But sometimes we have to do scary things. When the final bell rang, Naomi practically ran to her car. She'd borrowed Rachel's old sedan for the afternoon. The drive to Harrison & Associates took 30 minutes through heavy traffic. The law firm was downtown in a tall glass building, the kind of place that intimidated Naomi with its marble floors and expensive artwork. She gave her name to the receptionist, a young woman with perfect makeup and a crisp white blouse. Mr. Harrison is expecting you. 10th floor, suite 1003. The elevator was glass-walled, offering a view of the city as it climbed. Naomi watched the building shrink below her and tried to calm her racing heart. This was nothing. This would be nothing. Suite 1003 had frosted glass doors with the firm's name etched in gold letters. Inside, another receptionist greeted her and led her down a hallway lined with dark wood paneling. Everything whispered money and power, worlds away from Naomi's small apartment and teacher's salary. Mr. Harrison's office was corner suite with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The man himself stood when she entered, Tall, probably in his 60s, with silver hair and sharp eyes behind gold-rimmed glasses. "Ms. Brooks, thank you for coming." He shook her hand with a firm grip. "Please have a seat." Naomi sat in one of the leather chairs facing his desk. Mr. Harrison settled across from her, folding his hands on the desk's polished surface. He studied her for a moment, his expression unreadable. "I'm going to be direct with you, Ms. Brooks, because I think you deserve the truth without any legal dancing around it." He picked up a folder from his desk. "What I'm about to tell you will come as a shock. Do you need water or anything before we begin?" Naomi's mouth was dry, but she shook her head. "Just tell me, please. The suspense is worse than anything you could say." Mr. Harrison nodded. "Very well. 1 month before his death, Robert Patterson came to see me. He wanted to make a significant change to his will, specifically adding a codicil that would only go into effect under certain circumstances." "What kind of circumstances?" Robert had discovered something about his son. Something that disappointed him deeply. Mr. Harrison opened the folder and pulled out several documents. He'd hired a private investigator and learned that Trevor was having an affair with a woman named Candace Miller. He also discovered that Trevor had been planning to divorce you immediately upon receiving his inheritance. Naomi felt like she'd been punched in the stomach. Robert had known? He'd known Trevor was planning to leave her, and he hadn't warned her? "I know this is difficult to hear," Mr. Harrison continued. Robert was torn. On one hand, Trevor was his son. On the other hand, he'd watched you support Trevor for years, watched you carry the weight of that marriage with grace and dignity. He felt that Trevor had become someone he didn't recognize, someone who had lost all sense of honor and responsibility. "Why didn't he tell me?" Naomi whispered. "Why didn't he warn me?" He wanted to, but he was also dealing with his own health issues. He didn't know how much time he had left. Instead, he decided to do something that would hopefully teach Trevor a lesson and ensure that you weren't left with nothing. Mr. Harrison slid a document across the desk. "This is the codicil he added to his will." Naomi picked up the paper with shaking hands. The legal language was dense, but as she read, the meaning became clear. Her vision blurred with tears as the words registered. "I don't understand," she said, even though she did. She understood perfectly. She just couldn't believe it. Mr. Harrison's expression softened. "Let me read you the relevant section. Should my son, Trevor Michael Patterson, divorce his wife Naomi Brooks within 1 year of receiving his inheritance, all assets, holdings, and funds designated to him shall immediately transfer to Ms. Naomi Brooks. This clause is irrevocable and supersedes all other provisions in this will." The office went silent except for the ticking of a clock somewhere. Naomi stared at the lawyer, then at the document, then back at the lawyer. "The $310 million, she said slowly. "You're saying it's mine?" "Every penny," Mr. Harrison confirmed. "Trevor divorced you 3 days after receiving the inheritance. The conditions of the codicil have been met. As of this morning, when I filed the necessary paperwork with the court, you are the sole inheritor of Robert Patterson's estate." Naomi couldn't breathe. The office seemed to tilt around her, the floor shifting beneath her feet even though she was sitting down. $310 million. The number was so large it didn't compute, like trying to understand the distance to a star. "Ms. Brooks?" Mr. Harrison's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Do you need that water now?" She nodded mutely. He pressed a button on his phone, and moments later his secretary brought in a bottle of water. Naomi's hands shook so badly she almost dropped it. She managed to open the bottle and take a sip, the cool liquid helping to ground her. "This can't be real," she said finally. "Things like this don't happen to people like me. I assure you it's very real." Mr. Harrison pushed another document across the desk. "This is Robert's personal letter to you. He asked me to give it to you if the codicil ever went into effect. He hoped it wouldn't, hoped Trevor would prove him wrong." Naomi picked up the sealed envelope with trembling fingers. Her name was written on it in Robert's distinctive handwriting, elegant, controlled. She'd seen it on checks and documents throughout her marriage. She turned the envelope over, breaking the wax seal. The letter inside was written on heavy cream paper, dated 1 month before Robert's death. "Dear Naomi," it began. "If you're reading this, then my worst fears about Trevor have come true. I'm writing this letter in the hope that you'll never need to see it, but I'm old enough and realistic enough to know that hope isn't always sufficient. I owe you an apology. When Trevor first brought you home, I was disappointed. You weren't what I'd envisioned for my son. You came from a working-class background, had no family connections or wealth to bring to the marriage. I saw you as inadequate. I was wrong. Profoundly, completely wrong. Over the years, I watched you support my son when he'd given you every reason to leave. I watched you work multiple jobs to keep a roof over your heads while Trevor played video games and complained about how unfairly life had treated him. I watched you hold your head high at family gatherings where others treated you with disdain, never responding with bitterness or anger. You showed more character, integrity, and strength than most people demonstrate in a lifetime. You showed more of those qualities than my son ever has. 3 months ago, I began having health issues. The doctors told me my heart wasn't strong. I started thinking about my legacy, what I would leave behind. I realized with shame that I'd raised a son who cared more about money than people, who saw others as tools to be used and discarded. I hired an investigator to look into Trevor's life. What I discovered broke my heart. The affair, the plans to divorce you the moment he received his inheritance, the cruel things he said about you to his mistress. I confronted him once, carefully, without revealing how much I knew. He lied to my face without hesitation. I couldn't let him profit from his cruelty. I couldn't let you walk away from this marriage with nothing after all you'd sacrificed. So I created this codicil, this safety net. If Trevor proved me wrong, if he stayed with you and treated you well, then he would keep everything and you would never know about this letter. But if he did what I feared, if he showed his true colors the moment money came into the picture, then you would be protected. I'm sorry I didn't have the courage to tell you this while I was alive. I'm sorry I didn't warn you. Perhaps I hoped that my suspicions were wrong, that Trevor would surprise me. Or perhaps I was simply a coward, unwilling to destroy what little relationship remained with my son. I hope this inheritance gives you the freedom to build the life you deserve. Don't let guilt or obligation tie you to people who don't value you. You owe Trevor nothing. You never did. I wish I had known you better, Naomi. I wish I had seen your worth earlier. Thank you for trying to love my son. Thank you for being better than all of us. With respect and regret, Robert Patterson. Tears streamed down Naomi's face as she finished reading. She'd never expected this, never imagined that Robert had seen her, really seen her. She'd thought he barely registered her presence at family gatherings. He was a good man, Mr. Harrison said quietly. Flawed, certainly. He made mistakes with Trevor, probably spoiled him too much when he was young. But at the end he tried to do the right thing. Naomi wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. When does Trevor find out? I'll notify him this afternoon. The asset transfer is already in progress. His accounts will be frozen while everything is reallocated. Mr. Harrison's expression was grim. I don't expect him to take it well. He'll fight this, Naomi said. He'll sue. He'll claim the codicil is invalid or that Robert wasn't in his right mind. He can try, but he won't succeed. Robert was very thorough. He had multiple doctors assess his mental competency when he created the codicil. He videotaped himself explaining his reasoning. He built an ironclad legal foundation. Mr. Harrison tapped the folder. I've been practicing law for 38 years, and this is the most airtight will I've ever seen. Robert knew Trevor would contest it, so he made sure there were no vulnerabilities. Naomi looked down at the letter in her hands. What happens now? I don't know anything about managing money. I don't know how to be rich. We'll help you. The firm has financial advisors we work with, all of them trustworthy. But first, there are immediate practical concerns. Mr. Harrison pulled out a notepad. Do you have a safe place to stay? Trevor doesn't know where you live, does he? I'm staying with my sister. He doesn't know her address. Good. Keep it that way. Once Trevor finds out about this, he may try to contact you. Don't engage with him under any circumstances. All communication should go through me. Mr. Harrison wrote something down. You'll also need security. Trevor's mistress, Candace, is apparently quite volatile. There could be attempts at intimidation or worse. The reality of the situation was starting to sink in. Naomi was suddenly wealthy beyond imagination, but that wealth came with complications she'd never considered. I just wanted a divorce. I just wanted to move on with my life. I know, Mr. Harrison said gently, but life rarely goes according to our plans. The question is, what will you do with this opportunity? Naomi thought about that. What would she do? The inheritance felt surreal, like play money in a game. But it was real. She could do anything now. Go anywhere. Be anyone. The thought was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. I need time to process this, she said finally. This is too big to make decisions about right now. Of course. Take all the time you need. Mr. Harrison handed her a business card. This is my direct line. Call me anytime, day or night. In the meantime, I'll handle the legal aspects of the transfer. Within 72 hours, you'll have full access to all accounts and assets. Naomi stood on shaky legs. The leather folder Mr. Harrison handed her felt heavy, weighted with more than just paper. It contained account numbers, asset lists, property deeds. A life she'd never imagined. "Ms. Brooks," Mr. Harrison said as she reached the door. "Robert's letter wasn't just about money. It was about freedom. Don't let fear or guilt stop you from taking it." Naomi nodded, not trusting her voice. She walked out of the office in a daze, past the receptionist into the elevator. Her reflection in the mirrored walls looked the same. Tired teacher in a blue blouse, hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. But everything had changed. In the parking garage, she sat in Rachel's car for 15 minutes, just breathing. She pulled out her phone and stared at it. She should call Rachel. She should tell someone. But the words felt too big to say out loud. Instead she drove. Not back to Rachel's apartment, but aimlessly through the city. Past the school where she taught. Past the tiny studio apartment she'd signed a lease for, the one she'd thought would be her fresh start. Past the restaurant where she and Trevor had had their first date, a lifetime ago. The sun was setting when she finally parked near the waterfront. She got out and walked along the pier, watching boats bob in the marina. The water was dark blue, almost black, with streaks of gold from the dying light. $310 million. The number kept repeating in her mind like a mantra. She could pay off Rachel's student loans. She could donate to the school's art program. She could travel to all the places she'd only seen in books. She could do anything. But what did she want to do? For 5 years her wants had been pushed aside. She'd wanted a partner who contributed equally. She'd wanted respect. She'd wanted someone who saw her as more than a convenience. She'd wanted to be loved, really loved, not just tolerated. Now she had the freedom to want things just for herself. The realization was overwhelming. Her phone rang, making her jump. Rachel. She'd been gone for hours without calling. Naomi answered. "Where are you?" Rachel's voice was worried. "You said you'd be back by 5. It's almost 7. I'm at the waterfront. Rachel, I need to tell you something. Can you meet me here?" 20 minutes later, Rachel pulled up in her own car. Naomi had texted her the location. They sat on a bench overlooking the water, and Naomi told her everything. Rachel was silent for a long time after she finished. Then she said, "Holy hell." Despite everything, Naomi laughed. "That's one way to put it. Naomi, do you understand what this means? You never have to worry about money again. You never have to work unless you want to. You can do anything." Rachel grabbed her hand. "Anything? I know. I think I know. It's too big to really understand yet." They sat together as darkness fell completely, watching lights twinkle on across the city. Somewhere out there, Trevor was about to find out his inheritance was gone. Somewhere out there, a life Naomi had never imagined was waiting for her to step into it. "What are you going to do?" Rachel asked finally. Naomi thought about Robert's letter, about his words urging her toward freedom. "I'm going to figure out who I am when I'm not trying to save someone else. I'm going to stop living small because I thought that's all I deserved." "Good," Rachel said firmly. "It's about time." They drove back to Rachel's apartment together, both cars following the same route. Tomorrow Naomi would start figuring out what this new life looked like. Tomorrow she would begin making decisions about money and security and all the practical concerns Mr. Harrison had mentioned. But tonight she just let herself feel the full weight of what had happened. The betrayal, yes. The loss. But also the strange, unexpected gift that had emerged from the ashes of her marriage. Robert Patterson had seen her. Really seen her. And in his final act, he'd given her the means to save herself. Naomi didn't sleep. She lay in the narrow bed in Rachel's spare room, staring at the ceiling, watching the shadows shift as cars passed on the street below. Every time she closed her eyes, numbers danced behind her eyelids. 310 million. It felt like a dream, the kind where you wake up disappointed to find reality unchanged. But this was real. The leather folder sat on the nightstand, solid and undeniable. Inside were account numbers that belonged to her now, property deeds with her name on them, investment portfolios she didn't understand. At 5 in the morning, she gave up on sleep and made coffee. Rachel found her at the kitchen table an hour later, surrounded by papers. "You look terrible," Rachel said, but her voice was gentle. "Did you sleep at all?" "No." Naomi gestured at the documents spread across the table. "I've been trying to understand what I actually have. There's the liquid assets, that's about 90 million. Then there's the Patterson estate, which is worth about 30 million. The company holdings, the investment properties, the stock portfolio." She rubbed her eyes. "Rachel, I own an office building in Manhattan. An entire building. Why did Robert own a building in Manhattan? Because rich people do things like that, Rachel said, pouring her own coffee. Are you freaking out? Completely. I called in sick to school. I can't teach today. I can't stand in front of students and pretend to care about perspective drawing when my entire life just turned upside down. That's probably smart. Rachel sat across from her. So what's the plan? Mr. Harrison set up a meeting with a financial advisor for 10 this morning. Someone named Portia Chin. She's supposed to help me understand everything and start making decisions. Naomi picked up Robert's letter, which she'd read at least 20 times. I keep thinking about what he said. About freedom. About not letting guilt or obligation control me. Good advice. But I feel guilty anyway. Trevor was Robert's son. Maybe I should give some of it back, set up a trust for him or something. Absolutely not. Rachel's voice was sharp. Naomi, listen to me. Trevor treated you like garbage. He threw away 5 years of marriage the second he thought he didn't need you anymore. He mocked you, humiliated you, and tried to leave you with nothing. You don't owe him anything. But $300 million, Rachel. That's excessive. I don't need that much money. Robert thought you deserved it. He specifically designed the codicil to prevent Trevor from getting it. Honor Robert's wishes. Use the money to build something good. Rachel reached across the table and squeezed her hand. And please, for the love of everything, stop trying to save Trevor from the consequences of his own actions. You've been doing that for 5 years. It's time to stop. Naomi nodded slowly. Rachel was right. She knew Rachel was right. But years of putting others first were hard to shake off in a single morning. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Is this Naomi Brooks? A woman's voice, sharp and angry. Who is this? I think you know who this is. This is Candace Miller, Trevor's girlfriend. The word girlfriend was emphasized, territorial. We need to talk. Naomi's stomach clenched. I have nothing to say to you. Well, I have plenty to say to you. You need to fix this. You need to call that lawyer and tell him you don't want the money. It belongs to Trevor. It's his inheritance. No, Naomi said, her voice steadier than she felt. It was his inheritance. Now it's mine. Goodbye. Wait. You don't understand. Trevor and I have plans. We're building a life together. You can't just take that away from us. I didn't take anything. Trevor's own actions took it away. He chose to divorce me within the time limit set by his father's will. He made this choice. Candace's voice rose. Because he didn't know about the clause. It's not fair. You're stealing from us. How did you get this number? Naomi asked suddenly. That doesn't matter. What matters is. Naomi hung up. Her hands were shaking. She immediately called Mr. Harrison's cell phone number. He'd said to call any time, day or night. He answered on the second ring. Ms. Brooks. Is everything all right? Candace Miller just called me. She knows about the inheritance. How is that possible? You said you wouldn't tell Trevor until this afternoon. Mr. Harrison cursed under his breath. Trevor must have called his accounts this morning and discovered they were frozen. He likely put 2 and 2 together and contacted Ms. Miller. I'm sorry, I should have anticipated that. Have you received any other calls? Not yet. But Candace sounded angry. She demanded I give the money back. Do not engage with either of them. Block their numbers. If they show up at your location, call the police immediately. There was typing in the background. I'm arranging security for you right now. Someone will be at your sister's apartment within the hour. Is that really necessary? Yes, Mr. Harrison said firmly. Trevor just lost $300 million. People have done worse things for far less. Until we see how he reacts, I want you protected. After she hung up, Naomi blocked Candace's number. Then, on impulse, she unblocked Trevor's number to see if he'd tried to contact her. Sure enough, there were 7 missed calls and 3 voicemails. She listened to the first one. Trevor's voice was frantic. Naomi, call me back. Immediately. This is important. The second voicemail. Naomi, I know you're there. Pick up the phone. We need to talk about this whole situation. There's been some kind of mistake. The third voicemail. You vindictive witch. You planned this, didn't you? You manipulated my father before he died. I will sue you for every penny. You'll have nothing when I'm done with you. Naomi deleted the voicemails and blocked his number again. The progression from panic to threats had taken less than 2 hours. This was who Trevor really was, she realized. The mask had finally come off completely. The security team arrived at 9, 2 professional-looking individuals in dark suits who introduced themselves as Elena and Marcus. No, not Marcus. Naomi corrected herself immediately. The man's name was Dominic. He was tall, ex-military by his bearing, with kind eyes that didn't match his intimidating build. Elena was smaller, sharp-featured, with alert eyes that scanned everything. "We'll be with you 24/7 until Mr. Harrison determines the threat level has decreased," she explained. "One of us will always be nearby, but we'll try to be unobtrusive." "This feels excessive," Naomi said. "Better excessive than sorry," Dominic replied. His voice was surprisingly gentle. "We've seen situations like this before. Money makes people desperate." The meeting with Portia Chin, the financial advisor, took place at Mr. Harrison's office. Portia was a woman in her 40s with intelligent eyes and an efficient manner. She brought charts, graphs, and a presentation that walked Naomi through her new financial reality. "The first thing we need to do is protect these assets," Portia explained. "We'll set up trusts, establish separate accounts for different purposes, and create a comprehensive investment strategy. But before we do any of that, I need to understand what you want." "I don't know what I want," Naomi admitted. "I'm a high school art teacher. Yesterday, my biggest financial worry was whether I could afford my studio apartment. Now I'm sitting here talking about investment strategies for hundreds of millions of dollars. I don't even know where to start." Portia smiled. "That's okay. That's why I'm here. Let's start simple. Do you want to keep teaching?" Naomi thought about her students, about the joy she got from watching them discover their talents. "Yes, I love teaching. But maybe not full-time? Maybe I could do something more?" "Like what?" Ideas began flowing. "The art program at my school is underfunded. Kids have to share supplies and we can't afford proper equipment. I've always wanted to change that. And not just at my school, at all the schools in the district." She leaned forward, getting excited despite herself. "What if we set up a foundation? Something that funds art education in underprivileged schools." "That's an excellent idea," Portia said, making notes. "Philanthropic foundations have significant tax benefits, and they align with Robert Patterson's own charitable interests. He'd probably approve." They spent 2 hours planning. Portia explained terms like endowment and grant distribution, breaking complex financial concepts into language Naomi could understand. By the end, they had the outline of a plan: establish the Robert Patterson Foundation for Arts Education, create a board of directors, hire staff to manage operations. "This will take several months to set up properly," Portia said. "In the meantime, you need to think about your personal life. Where do you want to live? How do you want to structure your daily routine? What do you want your life to look like?" Those questions were harder. Naomi had spent 5 years living for someone else. She didn't know how to live for herself. "I signed a lease on a studio apartment," she said, "before all this happened. It's small, but it has good light for painting. Do you want to cancel the lease and find something larger?" "No," Naomi said slowly. "I think I want to keep it. Just for a while. I need something normal, something that doesn't remind me of all this money." Portia nodded approvingly. "That's very wise. Many people who come into sudden wealth make drastic changes immediately and regret it. Take your time. There's no rush." When the meeting ended, Naomi felt both exhausted and energized. She had a purpose now, something beyond just surviving. She would create something meaningful with this inheritance, something that honored Robert's memory and helped students like hers. Elena and Dominic drove her back to Rachel's apartment in a black SUV. "Any sign of Trevor or Candace?" Naomi asked. "Not yet," Elena said. "But we're monitoring the situation. Mr. Harrison is meeting with Trevor's lawyer this afternoon. That should give us a better sense of his next move." Back at the apartment, Rachel had made lunch. Sandwiches and soup, comfort food. They ate together while Naomi described the meeting with Portia. "A foundation," Rachel said approvingly. "That's perfect for you. You've always cared more about helping others than about yourself. Now you can actually make a difference." "It feels overwhelming," Naomi admitted. "Everything is happening so fast." "That's okay. You don't have to figure everything out today." Rachel paused. "So when are you going to quit your job?" "I'm not quitting. I told you I love teaching. But you don't need the money anymore. It's not about the money. It never was." Naomi picked at her sandwich. "Teaching gives me purpose. My students need me. I can't just abandon them. Even if you could do more good with a foundation?" "I can do both. Teach part-time, run the foundation part-time. Find a balance." Rachel smiled. "There's the Naomi I know. Always trying to do everything for everyone. That's not what I'm doing. Isn't it? You just inherited a fortune and your first thought is how to give most of it away. I'm not saying that's wrong. I think it's beautiful. I just want to make sure you keep some of it for yourself too. Naomi thought about that. Robert's letter had talked about freedom, but was she really free if she immediately tied herself to new obligations? Then again, wasn't the freedom to choose how to use the money the whole point? Her phone rang. Mr. Harrison. She answered on speaker so Rachel could hear. Ms. Brooks, I just finished meeting with Trevor's attorney. As expected, he's contesting the will. He's claiming undue influence, mental incompetency, and several other grounds. Will it work? No. As I told you, Robert was extraordinarily thorough. But the process will be unpleasant. Trevor is making this personal. Mr. Harrison's voice was grim. He's also making threats. His lawyer tried to present them as concerns for your safety, but they were clearly intimidation tactics. Naomi's blood ran cold. What kind of threats? Nothing specific enough to warrant police intervention, but enough to justify continued security. Don't go anywhere alone. Don't change your routine in ways that would make you predictable. And Ms. Brooks, one more thing. Trevor knows about the foundation idea. How? We just came up with it this morning. His lawyer has connections. Word travels in financial circles. Mr. Harrison paused. He's threatening to claim that you used your influence over Robert to set up this inheritance scheme, that you manipulated a dying man to steal from his son. It's nonsense, of course, but it will make headlines. Are you prepared for that? Naomi looked at Rachel, who nodded encouragement. Yes, she said, her voice stronger than she felt. I'm prepared. Let him try. Trevor Patterson sat in his lawyer's office, his hands clenched into fists so tight his knuckles had gone white. The sleek corner office with its city views might as well have been a prison cell. Everything he'd planned, everything he'd dreamed about for the past 2 weeks, was dissolving like smoke. Explain it to me again, he said through gritted teeth. Slowly. His lawyer, Richard Greenfield, was a man in his 50s with silver hair and expensive suits. He'd handled the Patterson family's legal matters for years. Right now he looked deeply uncomfortable. Your father added a codicil to his will 1 month before his death. The codicil stated that if you divorced Naomi within 1 year of receiving your inheritance, all assets would transfer to her instead. Richard spread his hands helplessly. You divorced her 3 days after the will was read. The conditions were met. The transfer is legal. This is insane. He was my father. That was my inheritance. My money. Trevor stood up and paced to the window. Below, the city sprawled out, full of things he'd been planning to buy. Penthouse apartments, sports cars, memberships to exclusive clubs. All of it slipping away. There has to be something we can do. Sue her for undue influence. Claim Dad wasn't in his right mind. We can certainly try, but I have to be honest with you, Trevor. The evidence supporting the codicil is ironclad. Richard pulled out a folder. Your father had 3 doctors assess his mental competency the day he created the codicil. He videotaped himself explaining his reasoning. He documented every step of the process. What reasoning? What possible reason could he have for doing this to me? Richard hesitated, then pulled out another document. He knew about Candace. He knew you were planning to divorce Naomi immediately after receiving the inheritance. He hired a private investigator, Trevor. He had photos, recordings, everything. Trevor felt the blood drain from his face. That's an invasion of privacy. That's illegal. Actually, it's not. Private investigators are perfectly legal, and your father had every right to investigate before deciding how to distribute his assets. Richard leaned forward. Trevor, I have to ask, why did you divorce Naomi so quickly? If you'd waited even a month, you would have kept everything. Because I didn't know about the codicil. Trevor's voice rose. How was I supposed to know? Nobody told me. That was the point, Richard said dryly. Your father was testing you. He hoped you'd prove him wrong. Trevor spun around. This is Naomi's fault. She must have known. She must have manipulated him before he died. There's no evidence of that. In fact, all evidence suggests Naomi had no knowledge of the codicil until after the divorce was finalized. Richard closed the folder. I'm sorry, Trevor, but we don't have a strong case here. The will is airtight. Gerald Harrison made sure of that. Then we'll make her life hell. We'll drag her through court for years. We'll make her wish she'd never been born. Trevor's mind was racing, grasping for any solution. She's nobody. A teacher. She doesn't know how to handle this kind of attention. She'll crack and give the money back. I wouldn't advise that approach. I don't care what you advise. I want my inheritance back. Trevor pulled out his phone. I'm calling Candace. We need to coordinate our strategy. But when he called, Candace didn't answer. He tried 3 more times. Nothing. A cold feeling settled in his stomach. He opened his text messages and typed, "Where are you? Why aren't you answering?" The response came quickly, "I can't do this anymore. You lied about the money. You said we'd be set for life. I can't be with someone who has nothing. Goodbye." Trevor stared at the message, reading it over and over. Candace was leaving him? After everything he'd given up for her? He called again. This time he got a message. "The number you have reached is no longer in service." She blocked him. Changed her number. She was gone. "Everything all right?" Richard asked, watching Trevor's face go through several shades of red. "Fine," Trevor managed. "Everything's fine." But it wasn't fine. Nothing was fine. In the span of 2 hours he'd lost $300 million and the woman he'd destroyed his marriage for. He was left with nothing, less than nothing. His accounts were frozen. He didn't even have access to money for rent. "I need to contest this will," Trevor said. "I don't care what it costs. I don't care how long it takes. I want my money back." "Legal challenges like this are expensive," Richard warned. "Very expensive. Do you have the resources to fund a prolonged court battle?" Trevor hadn't thought about that. All his assets were tied up in the estate, which was now Naomi's estate. His personal accounts had maybe $10,000, most of it credit card debt he'd racked up in the past 2 weeks buying things for Candace. "The family will help me," he said with more confidence than he felt. "My mother, my uncles, someone will front the money." "Maybe," Richard said neutrally. "But Trevor, I need to warn you about something. If we go to court, everything becomes public record. The affair, your father's investigation, the reasons he wrote the codicil. Your family will have to read about all of it in depositions and filings. Are you prepared for that?" Trevor wasn't listening anymore. He was pulling up his mother's number, already composing what he'd say. She would help him. She had to. He was her son. "I'll be in touch," he told Richard, heading for the door. "Start drafting the challenge papers. I want this filed by the end of the week." Outside, the afternoon sun felt too bright, hostile. Trevor's car, a new BMW he'd bought 3 days ago, was parked in the firm's garage. At least he still had that, though he'd probably have to sell it soon if he couldn't access any money. He drove to his mother's house, the Patterson family estate where he'd grown up. The mansion sat on 5 acres in an exclusive neighborhood, all Georgian columns and manicured lawns. Trevor had a key, but he rang the bell anyway. The housekeeper answered. "Mr. Trevor. Your mother is in the conservatory." Patricia Patterson was 60, elegantly thin, with silver hair styled in a perfect bob. She was drinking tea surrounded by orchids when Trevor found her. She looked up at him with cool eyes. "Mother, I need to talk to you." "I heard," Patricia said, setting down her teacup. "Gerald Harrison called me this morning. Quite a mess you've made, Trevor." "I didn't make this mess. Dad did. He set a trap for me and I walked right into it." "A trap you could have avoided by staying married to your wife." Patricia's voice was sharp. "Did you really think you could divorce her 3 days after the funeral and there would be no consequences?" "I didn't know about the codicil." "Obviously. Your father was counting on that." Patricia studied him. "Why did you divorce her so quickly, Trevor?" "Naomi was always pleasant, hardworking. She supported you for years when you couldn't be bothered to find a job. What did she do to deserve such treatment?" "She was holding me back," Trevor said. "With the inheritance I could finally have the life I deserve. I didn't need her anymore." "The life you deserve," Patricia repeated, her voice flat. "And what life is that? The one where you mooch off family money while contributing nothing? The one where you betray the one person who stood by you? Are you taking her side?" Trevor couldn't believe what he was hearing. "She's not even family anymore. I'm your son." "You are my son," Patricia agreed. "But that doesn't mean I approve of your choices. Your father saw something in you that disappointed him deeply. I'm beginning to see it too. I need money to fight this. Legal fees, living expenses. Will you help me or not?" Patricia was silent for a long moment. Then she said, "No." "What?" "I said no. I will not fund your attempt to steal back money your father explicitly did not want you to have." She picked up her teacup again. "Your father and I discussed this codicil before he died. I didn't agree with his methods, but I understood his reasoning. You need to learn that actions have consequences, Trevor. Maybe losing this inheritance will finally teach you that lesson." Trevor felt like he'd been slapped. "You knew? You knew about the codicil?" "Not the specific details, but yes, I knew your father was concerned about your behavior. He showed me the investigator's report about your affair. Patricia's eyes were hard. I know what you said about Naomi to that woman. How you mocked her, how you called her pathetic and useless. Your father was right to protect her from you. I don't believe this, Trevor said. My own mother is turning against me. I'm not against you, Trevor. I'm just not going to enable your worst impulses anymore. Your father tried that for years and look what it created. She stood up. I think you should leave now. Come back when you're ready to accept responsibility for your choices. Trevor stormed out of the conservatory, through the marble halls of his childhood home, and back to his car. His hands shook as he started the engine. He had no money, no girlfriend, no support from his family. Naomi had taken everything from him. No, he corrected himself. He'd lost everything through his own choices. But it was easier to blame Naomi. Easier to imagine her as the villain in this story rather than face the truth about himself. He drove aimlessly for hours watching the city roll by. Everywhere he looked, he saw reminders of what he'd lost. The luxury hotels where he'd planned to stay. The restaurants where he'd planned to wine and dine Candace. The car dealership where he'd planned to buy a Ferrari. All of it gone. His phone rang. A blocked number. He answered anyway. Mr. Patterson? This is Jennifer Wu from the Daily Observer. I'm writing a story about your father's will and the inheritance transfer to your ex-wife. Do you have any comment? So it was starting. The media attention, the public humiliation. No comment, Trevor said and hung up. But 5 minutes later, another call came. Then another. Word was spreading fast. The reporters wanted the story. Wealthy man leaves fortune to daughter-in-law instead of son after discovering son's affair. It would make headlines for weeks. Trevor finally turned off his phone and drove to Candace's apartment. Maybe if he could just talk to her, explain the situation, she'd understand. They could figure this out together. But when he arrived, Candace's car was gone. The apartment looked empty. He rang the bell repeatedly. Nothing. A neighbor came out. She moved out this morning, the neighbor said. Had movers come and take everything. Didn't say where she was going. Trevor stood there on the doorstep, staring at the closed door. Candace hadn't just left him. She'd erased herself from his life completely, leaving no way for him to follow. He got back in his car and drove. He didn't know where he was going until he arrived. The small apartment building where he'd lived with Naomi. Their old place. He sat in the parking lot, looking up at the window of what used to be their home. He'd been so eager to leave this place, so certain that something better was waiting for him. Now he would give anything to go back, to have one more chance to make a different choice. But life didn't work that way. There were no do-overs, no second chances. He'd made his choice and now he had to live with the consequences. Trevor pulled out his phone and turned it back on. More missed calls from reporters. He scrolled past them and stopped at a text from Richard Greenfield. Reconsidered my position. I don't think I can represent you in this matter. I'm referring you to another attorney. Best of luck. Even his lawyer was abandoning him. Trevor laughed, a harsh sound with no humor in it. He'd wanted to be free of Naomi, free to live the life he deserved. Well, he was free now. Free and completely alone. He started the car and drove away from the apartment, from his old life, toward an uncertain future where he had nothing and no one. The inheritance that was supposed to solve all his problems had instead revealed the truth about who he really was. And that truth was ugly. 3 weeks passed. Naomi moved into her studio apartment despite Rachel's protests that she could now afford something much nicer. The space was small, just one room with a kitchenette and bathroom, but the southern-facing windows filled it with light. She bought a small easel, set up a painting corner, and felt more at home than she had in years. Elena and Dominic remained her constant shadows, though they were good at being unobtrusive. Elena often waited in the car while Naomi taught her classes. Dominic had developed a taste for cafeteria food and would sit in the teacher's lounge, reading thriller novels while keeping one eye on the hallway. Do they really need to be here? Naomi asked Mr. Harrison during one of their weekly check-ins. It's been 3 weeks. Trevor hasn't done anything. Trevor has been busy with his legal challenges, Mr. Harrison said. All of which are failing, by the way. But once he accepts that he can't win in court, he may try other methods. Let's keep the security for another month. The foundation was taking shape. Portia had helped Naomi hire a director, a woman named Sharon Hughes who had 20 years of experience in arts administration. Sharon was in her 50s, energetic and passionate about arts education. Together they were building something meaningful. We've received applications from 30 schools in the district, Sharon told Naomi during their weekly meeting. All of them need supplies, equipment, or curriculum support. We can't help everyone in the first year, but we can make a significant impact. Naomi reviewed the applications, reading stories from teachers about students who couldn't afford basic art supplies, programs that had been cut due to budget restrictions, talented kids who had no outlet for their creativity. Each story broke her heart a little. Let's start with 10 schools, she decided. Give them comprehensive support, supplies, equipment, a small grant for teacher salaries. Show what's possible. Then expand next year. That's a good plan, Sharon agreed. And your idea about the scholarship program? I want to offer college scholarships to students pursuing art education degrees. Full tuition, room and board, everything. If we can get more qualified art teachers into schools, we can make a lasting difference. They worked together for hours, building budgets and timelines. Naomi found herself energized by the work in a way teaching alone had never quite managed. She was creating something from nothing, turning Robert's inheritance into opportunity for hundreds of students. At school, she told her principal about the foundation but asked to remain a part-time teacher. 3 days a week she taught her classes. The other 2 days she worked on foundation business. It was the perfect balance. Her students noticed the change in her. "Ms. Brooks, you seem happier," Amara said one afternoon. "Like really happy, not just pretending." "I am happier," Naomi admitted. "Sometimes good things can come from bad situations." "Is this about your divorce?" "Because my mom got divorced last year, and she says it was the best thing that ever happened to her." Naomi smiled. "Your mom is a wise woman." One evening, Naomi was painting in her apartment when her phone rang. An unknown number, but she answered anyway. Most of the reporter calls had died down. "Miss Brooks? This is Jordan Fletcher. I'm a volunteer coordinator at the Community Arts Center. Sharon Hughes gave me your number." "Oh yes. Sharon mentioned you might call. You're interested in partnering with the foundation?" "Very interested. The center serves low-income neighborhoods, provides free art classes to kids and adults. We're operating on a shoestring budget. If your foundation could help with supplies and maybe some instructor salaries, we could expand our reach significantly." They talked for 30 minutes about the center's programs, its mission, its needs. Jordan was articulate and passionate, clearly devoted to the work. Naomi agreed to visit the center the following week. When she arrived, Elena trailing discreetly behind, Naomi was struck by the energy of the place. The Community Arts Center occupied an old warehouse that had been converted into studios and classrooms. Paint-splattered floors, walls covered in student artwork, the sound of laughter and conversation echoing through the space. Jordan met her at the entrance, a man in his mid-30s with warm brown eyes and paint on his jeans. He had an easy smile and a firm handshake. "Welcome to Organized Chaos," he said with a laugh. "We're in the middle of our after-school program, so it's a little loud." He gave her a tour, introducing her to instructors and students. An elderly woman was teaching watercolor techniques to a group of teenagers. A young man was helping children create sculptures from recycled materials. Everyone seemed genuinely engaged, excited to be there. "We serve about 200 students a week," Jordan explained. "But we have a waiting list of over 500. If we had more space, more supplies, more instructors, we could reach so many more people." "Tell me what you need," Naomi said. They spent 2 hours going over budgets and wish lists. The center needed everything: paint, brushes, canvas, clay, pottery wheels, digital art equipment. Jordan was modest in his requests, clearly afraid to ask for too much. "Jordan," Naomi said finally, "I'm not looking to give you a small grant. I want to fund a complete expansion. New equipment, additional instructors, maybe even expanding into the empty warehouse next door." "What would that cost?" Jordan stared at her. "Ms. Brooks, that would be close to $2 million. "Then that's what we'll do." Naomi pulled out her phone and made a note. "Have your director put together a comprehensive proposal. Include everything you need for the next 5 years. We'll make it happen." "I don't know what to say," Jordan said, his voice thick with emotion. "Do you know how many lives this will change?" "That's the point," Naomi said simply. As they walked back through the center, Jordan told her about his own story. He'd grown up in poverty, found art as a teenager through a community center much like this one. Art had given him purpose, direction, hope. He'd gone to college on scholarship, earned a degree in art education, and dedicated his life to giving other kids the same chance he'd had. "That's a beautiful story," Naomi said. "That's exactly what I'm trying to create with the foundation. It's more than beautiful. It's necessary." Jordan stopped and looked at her seriously. "Most people don't understand how important art is, especially for kids growing up in difficult circumstances. Art saves lives. It saved mine. Naomi felt a connection to this man, this stranger who understood what she was trying to do. Would you consider joining the foundation's board? We need people who understand the real impact of arts education. I'd be honored, Jordan said without hesitation. When Naomi left the center, Elena was waiting by the car. He seems nice, Elena commented neutrally. He does, Naomi agreed. Genuine. Passionate about the work. And single, according to his social media, Elena added with a small smile. Not that I was checking. Just part of our security assessment. Naomi laughed. I'm not looking for a relationship, Elena. I just got divorced. I'm focusing on the foundation. Of course, Elena said, but her smile suggested she didn't entirely believe it. The following weeks were busy. Sharon and Jordan worked together on the center's expansion proposal. Naomi reviewed applications from schools, approved grants, and slowly learned how to manage the foundation's operations. She was getting better at the financial side of things, more comfortable making decisions about large sums of money. Trevor's legal challenges continued to fail. Each week, Mr. Harrison would update her on dismissed motions and rejected appeals. Trevor was burning through money he didn't have, racking up legal fees that his lawyer kept trying to collect. He's running out of options, Mr. Harrison said during one of their calls. His latest motion was so poorly argued the judge actually laughed in court. Trevor can't afford competent legal representation anymore. Is he dangerous? Naomi asked. Should I still have security? Let's keep them another 2 weeks, then we'll reassess. One Saturday morning, Naomi was at the farmer's market near her apartment when she ran into Jordan. He was buying vegetables, his reusable bags already half full of produce. Ms. Brooks, he said, looking genuinely pleased to see her. Fancy meeting you here. Please call me Naomi. And I live nearby. This is my regular Saturday routine. Mine too. I live a few blocks over. He gestured to his bags. I like to cook. It's my other artistic outlet. They walked through the market together, talking about everything except the foundation. Jordan told her about his recent painting project, a series of cityscapes. Naomi told him about her own painting, which she'd been doing more of lately. I'd love to see your work sometime, Jordan said as they reached the market's edge. Maybe I could stop by your studio? Naomi hesitated. Was this crossing a professional line? But Jordan's expression was friendly, nothing more. And she did want feedback on her recent paintings from someone who understood art. Sure, she said. How about next Saturday? Around 2. Perfect. I'll bring coffee. When Saturday came, Naomi found herself nervous. She cleaned her apartment 3 times, arranged her paintings carefully, and changed her outfit twice. It was ridiculous. This was a professional colleague stopping by to look at art. Nothing more. Elena had the weekend off, but she'd left her phone number with strict instructions to call if anything felt off. I'm not trying to interfere with your social life, she'd said. But we're still in the cautious phase. Jordan arrived exactly at 2, carrying expensive coffee and a bag of pastries. I didn't know what you liked, so I got an assortment. He was wearing jeans and a green sweater that brought out the warmth in his eyes. Naomi realized with a start that he was handsome, something she hadn't really registered before. They spent an hour looking at her paintings. Jordan was thoughtful in his critique, praising her use of color but suggesting ways to improve her composition. He wasn't condescending or patronizing, just genuinely helpful. These recent ones, he said, pointing to the series she'd started after the divorce, they're different from your earlier work. More raw. More honest. They came from a difficult time, Naomi admitted. My divorce, everything that followed. I was painting my feelings instead of trying to make pretty pictures. It shows. In the best way. Jordan looked at her. Sometimes our best art comes from our worst experiences. They moved to the small couch, drinking coffee and talking. Jordan told her about his dreams for the Community Arts Center, how he envisioned it becoming a hub for the entire neighborhood. Naomi shared her own vision for the foundation, how she wanted it to become a model for arts education funding. You're really doing this, Jordan said with admiration. Not just talking about it, but actually making it happen. That's rare. I have the resources now, Naomi said. It would be wrong not to use them for something meaningful. Still, most people who come into sudden wealth just buy bigger houses and fancier cars. You're building something that will outlast you. The afternoon slipped away. At 5, Jordan reluctantly said he needed to go. I have to prepare for a class tomorrow. But this was really nice, Naomi. Thank you for showing me your work. Thank you for the feedback. And for the coffee. At the door, Jordan paused. Would you like to have dinner sometime? There's a great little Italian place near the center. Nothing fancy, just good food and conversation. Naomi's first instinct was to say no. She wasn't ready. She'd just gotten out of a terrible marriage. But looking at Jordan's kind face, his genuine smile, she found herself saying, yes. I'd like that. Great. How about Friday? 7 o'clock. After he left, Naomi sat on her couch, processing what had just happened. She'd agreed to a date. Was it a date? Felt like a date. But it was just dinner with a colleague, right? Someone she was working with professionally. Her phone rang. Rachel. How was your afternoon with the handsome arts center director? How did you know about that? Elena might have mentioned it. So, how was it? It was nice, Naomi admitted. Really nice. He's smart and funny and passionate about his work. We have a lot in common. And we're having dinner on Friday. Rachel squealed. Naomi Brooks, are you going on a date? It's not a date. It's a professional dinner between colleagues. Sure it is, Rachel said with obvious amusement. Keep telling yourself that. After she hung up, Naomi looked at her paintings, at the series she'd created from pain and loss. Maybe Jordan was right. Maybe good art did come from difficult experiences. And maybe, just maybe, good things could come from difficult experiences too. She wasn't ready for a relationship. She knew that. But dinner with a friend? That seemed manageable. That seemed safe. And for the first time since her divorce, Naomi felt like she might be ready to open her life to new possibilities. Trevor's new apartment was in a building he would have scorned a month ago. Aging brick, peeling paint, sirens wailing through the night. The studio was barely larger than a closet, with a view of an alley and a broken air conditioning unit that rattled constantly. He couldn't afford anything better. His credit cards were maxed out. His mother had cut him off completely. His legal bills were piling up, and his current lawyer kept calling to demand payment. The furniture was borrowed from his mother's storage unit, pieces she'd planned to donate. The television didn't work. The internet connection kept dropping. Everything about this place reminded Trevor how far he'd fallen. His phone rang. Another blocked number. He'd been getting these calls for days, always the same. Reporters wanting his side of the story. Trevor had stopped answering, but this time he picked up anyway. Mr. Patterson, this is Linda Martinez from Channel 7 News. We're doing a feature on your father's will and the inheritance situation. We'd love to get your perspective. My perspective? Trevor laughed bitterly. My perspective is that my father stabbed me in the back from beyond the grave. My ex-wife manipulated him into leaving her everything. That's my perspective. Do you have evidence of this manipulation? I don't need evidence. I know what happened. Naomi got her claws into my father and convinced him to change his will. But the will was changed 1 month before your father's death, and there's no record of Naomi even speaking to him during that time. Court documents show your father had documented evidence of your affair and your stated plans to divorce immediately after receiving the inheritance. Trevor felt his face flush. Those documents are falsified. So you're saying your father's lawyer, the private investigator he hired, and 3 separate doctors all participated in a conspiracy against you? I'm saying my father was sick and confused and people took advantage of that. Thank you for your time, Mr. Patterson. The reporter hung up. Trevor threw his phone across the room, watching it bounce off the wall and clatter to the floor. This was insane. Everyone was against him. Everyone believed Naomi's lies. He pulled his laptop onto his bed and opened social media. The story was everywhere. Billionaire leaves fortune to daughter-in-law instead of son. Son loses $310 million by divorcing too quickly. What the Patterson inheritance case teaches about prenups. The comments were worse. Thousands of strangers weighing in, almost all of them siding with Naomi. He got what he deserved. Imagine being so greedy you divorce your wife 3 days after your father's funeral. The dad knew his son was trash and protected the right person. Trevor wanted to scream. These people didn't know him. They didn't understand. He'd spent his whole life in his father's shadow, never measuring up, never being good enough. Finally, he'd been given what was rightfully his, and it had been snatched away based on a technicality. He opened a new browser tab and searched for Naomi Brooks Patterson Foundation. Articles popped up. Former teacher uses inheritance to fund arts education. Patterson Foundation announces grants to 10 local schools. Community Arts Center receives $2 million expansion grant. There were photos of Naomi at schools, surrounded by smiling students. Naomi cutting a ribbon at the Arts Center. Naomi looking poised and confident in ways she never had during their marriage. She'd taken his money and turned herself into some kind of philanthropic hero. Made him sick. Trevor clicked on one of the articles and read about the Foundation's scholarship program. Full rides for students pursuing arts education degrees. We want to ensure that talented students aren't held back by financial constraints, Naomi was quoted as saying. Every child deserves the chance to pursue their passion. Pretty words. Easy to say when you're spending someone else's money. His phone buzzed. A text from his lawyer. We need to discuss your outstanding bill. Please call me today. Trevor deleted the text. He couldn't pay the bill. He had nothing. His bank account had maybe $300. His car payment was overdue. He'd had to take a job stocking shelves at a warehouse. Overnight shifts that left him exhausted and angry. Stocking shelves. He'd gone from expecting $300 million to stocking shelves for $12 an hour. Another text came through, this one from his Uncle Richard. Trevor, I heard about the job. I might have something better for you at my company. Call me. At least someone in the family still cared. Trevor called immediately. Uncle Richard? You said you might have a job? I did say that, but I need to be upfront with you. It's entry level. Filing, data entry, basic office work. The pay is $30,000 a year. $30,000. Trevor had been planning to spend that much on a watch. That's all you have? That's all I'm willing to offer, Richard said coolly. Look, Trevor, I know you're going through a hard time, but you made some bad choices and now you need to rebuild. This job is a chance to prove you're willing to work for what you have. I shouldn't have to prove anything. That money was mine. Was it? Your father disagreed. And frankly, after reading about what you did to Naomi, I disagree too. Richard's voice softened slightly. Take the job, Trevor. Show up on time, work hard, and maybe in a few years you'll have built something real. Or don't take it and keep feeling sorry for yourself. Your choice. Trevor wanted to hang up, to tell his uncle where he could shove his $30,000 job. But he also needed money. When would I start? Monday. 8 o'clock. Don't be late. After they hung up, Trevor sat in his miserable apartment and tried to imagine going to work every day in some cubicle, taking orders from people who were probably younger than him, living on $30,000 a year. It was humiliating. All of this was humiliating. His phone buzzed again. This time it was Candace calling from a new number. His heart leaped. Maybe she changed her mind. Maybe she realized they could still have a life together. Candace? I've been trying to reach you. I know. I blocked you. Her voice was hard. I'm only calling to tell you to stop trying to contact me. I've moved on. You should too. But we had plans. We talked about our future. That future included $300 million. Without the money, there is no future. She paused. You're broke, Trevor. You're working night shifts at a warehouse. You're nobody. I can't be with someone who's nobody. You're really that shallow? But even as he said it, Trevor knew he was the same way. He'd left Naomi for exactly the same reason. I'm realistic. Find someone else at your level. Goodbye, Trevor. She hung up before he could respond. Trevor stared at his phone, feeling something crack inside him. Candace was right. He was nobody. He'd lost everything and he had no one to blame but himself. No, that wasn't right. He had plenty of people to blame. His father for setting that trap. Naomi for taking advantage of it. The lawyer for not warning him. Everyone who'd failed to see that he was the victim here. He opened his laptop again and went to the Foundation's website. There was a Contact Us page with a form. Trevor stared at it for a long moment, then began typing. You stole from me. You manipulated my father when he was vulnerable. You destroyed my life. This isn't over. I will get my inheritance back and I will make you pay for what you've done. He hit send before he could second-guess himself. It felt good putting his anger into words. Making sure Naomi knew he wasn't giving up. But even as the message sent, a small voice in the back of his mind whispered that he was making things worse. That threatening her was stupid, possibly illegal. That he should just accept what happened and move on. Trevor silenced that voice. He'd been accepting things his whole life, accepting his father's disappointment, accepting his failures. Not anymore. If he was going down, he'd make sure everyone knew it wasn't his fault. Over the next few days he sent more messages. To the Foundation. To the lawyer's office. To anyone connected to Naomi. Each one angrier than the last, each one more desperate. You'll regret this. I know where you live. Money doesn't change who you really are. You're nothing without what you stole from me. He didn't really mean the threats. He was just angry, just venting. But each message felt like a small victory, a way to take back some control. On Friday, 2 men in suits showed up at his apartment. They identified themselves as police detectives. "Mr. Patterson, we need to talk to you about some messages you've been sending." Trevor's stomach dropped. What messages? Threatening messages to Naomi Brooks and her associates. Several of them could be interpreted as stalking or harassment. The older detective pulled out his phone, showing Trevor screenshots of his own messages. "Did you send these?" "I was just upset. I didn't mean anything by them." "That's what they all say." The detective put his phone away. "Here's how this works. You're going to stop all contact with Ms. Brooks immediately. No messages, no calls, no attempts to see her. If you violate this order, we'll arrest you. Understand? This is ridiculous. I'm the victim here." "No, Mr. Patterson, you're not. You're a man who made bad choices and lost an inheritance you were never entitled to in the first place." The younger detective spoke for the first time. "Ms. Brooks has done nothing wrong. Leave her alone." After they left, Trevor sat on his bed, shaking with anger and shame. Even the police were treating him like a criminal, like he was the bad guy in all this. He looked around his apartment at the borrowed furniture and the peeling walls. This was his life now. This was what his choices had led to. The unfairness of it all pressed down on him like a weight. He hadn't even done anything that bad. So he'd had an affair. So he'd left Naomi. People did those things all the time. Why was he being punished so severely? But deep down, in a place he didn't like to examine too closely, Trevor knew the answer. His father hadn't punished him for the affair or the divorce. His father had punished him for being cruel, for treating Naomi like garbage, for showing that he cared about money more than people. And maybe, just maybe, his father had been right. Trevor closed his laptop and got ready for work. His shift at the warehouse started in 2 hours. He would stock shelves, take orders, and try not to think about the life he'd lost. Because the alternative, accepting responsibility for his own actions, was too painful to consider. 6 months after the divorce, Naomi stood in front of a mirror in her apartment, adjusting the red dress she'd chosen for the foundation's first annual gala. The event was being held at a downtown hotel, with over 300 guests expected. Business leaders, educators, artists, and philanthropists, all coming together to celebrate the foundation's achievements and support its continued growth. "You look beautiful," Rachel said from behind her. Rachel was wearing a dark blue gown, her hair elegantly styled. "Trevor's an idiot for letting you go." "Trevor did me a favor," Naomi said, and she meant it. The woman in the mirror barely resembled the exhausted teacher who'd signed divorce papers 6 months ago. That woman had been defeated, worn down. This woman looked confident, purpose-driven. A knock at the door. Elena, in a sleek black pantsuit, poked her head in. "Car's ready when you are." The security had been reduced to occasional check-ins after Trevor's visit from the police. He'd stopped sending messages, stopped trying to contact her. Mr. Harrison believed the threat had passed, though Elena still liked to check in before major events. The ride to the hotel gave Naomi time to mentally review her speech. She'd written and rewritten it a dozen times, wanting to strike the right balance between gratitude and vision. The hotel's grand ballroom had been transformed. Round tables draped in white linens. Centerpieces of colorful flowers arranged by students from one of their grant schools. A small stage with a podium and a large screen for presentations. Jordan met her at the entrance, looking handsome in a dark gray suit. "Ready for your big moment?" "Nervous," Naomi admitted. "What if I mess up the speech? What if no one wants to donate?" "You'll be perfect. And people are already donating. We've raised over $500,000 in advance contributions." Jordan offered his arm. "Come on, let's mingle before things get started." Over the past few months, Naomi and Jordan had grown close. They had dinner once a week, sometimes at restaurants, sometimes at one of their apartments. They talked about art and education, shared stories about their childhoods, laughed at the same jokes. It was easy, comfortable, completely different from her relationship with Trevor. Jordan had never pushed for more than friendship, and Naomi appreciated that. She wasn't ready for romance. Maybe she never would be. But having Jordan in her life felt right. The ballroom filled quickly. Naomi recognized faces from the schools they'd helped, teachers she'd worked with, students whose lives had been changed by the foundation's grants. Sharon moved through the crowd with practiced ease, greeting donors and introducing people to each other. At 7 o'clock, Sharon took the stage to welcome everyone. She spoke briefly about the foundation's mission, then introduced Naomi. Naomi walked to the podium on shaky legs. 300 faces looked up at her expectantly. She gripped the edges of the podium and took a breath. 6 months ago, she began, I was a high school art teacher worried about whether my students had enough paint for their projects. Today, because of a generous and unexpected gift, I stand before you representing a foundation that has already changed hundreds of lives. She clicked the remote and images appeared on the screen behind her. Students painting murals. A pottery class at the community center. A scholarship recipient hugging her mother at a college acceptance ceremony. The Robert Patterson Foundation for Arts Education exists because one man believed that everyone deserves a chance to pursue their passion, regardless of their financial circumstances. He believed in supporting people who were overlooked, who worked hard without recognition, who gave more than they received. Naomi's voice grew stronger as she continued. We've provided grants to 10 schools, funded expansion of the Community Arts Center, and offered full scholarships to 15 students. But this is just the beginning. With your help, we can reach 50 schools next year. We can double our scholarship program. We can prove that arts education isn't a luxury but a necessity. The screen showed more images, before and after photos of school art rooms, students displaying their artwork, teachers crying tears of joy when receiving grant notifications. Every child we help, every teacher we support, every program we fund creates a ripple effect. Art doesn't just teach techniques. It teaches problem-solving, self-expression, confidence. It gives young people tools to understand themselves and the world around them. Naomi paused, making eye contact with the audience. Art saved my life. It gave me purpose when I felt lost. It gave me hope when I had none. That's what we're offering these students. Not just paint and clay but hope and purpose. The applause was thunderous. People stood, clapping and cheering. Naomi felt tears prick her eyes but blinked them back. This was what Robert had wanted. This was his legacy, not the money itself but what the money could create. After her speech, donors lined up to talk to her. Business owners wanting to contribute. Former teachers sharing stories about how arts education had changed their students' lives. A young woman who'd received one of the foundation's scholarships, thanking her with tears streaming down her face. Ms. Brooks, because of you I get to go to college. My family couldn't have afforded it. You changed my entire future. Naomi hugged her tightly. You earned it. You worked hard. We just removed one barrier. The rest is all you. Jordan appeared at her elbow, gently extracting her from the crowd. You need to eat something. You haven't had anything since this morning. They sat at a table near the back, relatively hidden from the crowd. Jordan handed her a plate with chicken, vegetables, and a roll. Naomi realized she was starving. That was an incredible speech, Jordan said. Not a dry eye in the house. I meant every word. Naomi took a bite of chicken. This is what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. Not just teaching, though I love that, but creating opportunities on a larger scale. Robert chose the right person, Jordan said quietly. He saw something in you that you're finally seeing in yourself. Before Naomi could respond, Sharon hurried over. Naomi, we have a situation. Someone showed up at the door who wasn't invited. Security stopped him, but he's demanding to see you. Naomi's heart sank. Trevor? Yes. He's in the lobby causing a scene. Jordan stood immediately. I'll handle it. No, Naomi said, rising. I'll go. This is my event, my life. I need to face him. Elena materialized from somewhere. I'm coming with you. The hotel lobby was marble and mirrors, elegant and cold. Trevor stood near the entrance, arguing with a security guard. He was wearing a rumpled suit that looked too big, his hair unkempt. He looked nothing like the man who'd smirked at her in the lawyer's office 6 months ago. Trevor, Naomi said calmly. What are you doing here? He spun around. I came to tell you something. I came to tell everyone what you really are. Which is? A thief. A manipulator. You stole my inheritance. I stole nothing. Your father made his choice. You made yours. This is the consequence. Naomi kept her voice even, refusing to be drawn into his anger. You need to leave. Why? So you can continue playing the hero? So you can keep pretending you deserve my money? Trevor's voice rose. You were nothing. A teacher barely making ends meet. I supported you. You didn't support me, Naomi said, her calm finally cracking. I supported you. For 3 years while you played video games and complained about your father. I worked 2 jobs so we could eat. I believed in you when no one else did. And the second you got money, you threw me away like garbage. Because you were holding me back. No, Trevor. I was the only thing holding you up. Naomi stepped closer. Your father saw who you really are. He saw the cruelty, the selfishness, the complete lack of integrity. He didn't punish you by giving me the inheritance. He protected me from you. Trevor's face went red. You think you're better than me now? Because you have money? I don't think I'm better than you because of money. I think I'm better than you because I care about something other than myself. Naomi gestured toward the ballroom. I'm using this inheritance to help others. What would you have done with it? Bought expensive cars and designer clothes? Spent it on a woman who left you the second the money disappeared. How dare you? Leave, Naomi said firmly. You have no place here. You lost everything because of your own choices. Own that. Learn from it. But don't you dare blame me for the consequences of your actions. This isn't over, Trevor said, but his voice had lost its strength. Yes, it is. It's been over since the day you walked out. Naomi turned to the security guard. Please escort Mr. Patterson out. If he returns, call the police. She walked back toward the ballroom, Elena and Jordan flanking her. Her hands were shaking, but she felt strangely calm. She'd finally said everything she'd needed to say to Trevor. Are you okay? Jordan asked. I am actually. Naomi smiled. For the first time in a long time, I really am. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of conversation and celebration. By the time the gala ended at 11, the foundation had raised over $2 million in new donations. Sharon was practically glowing with success. We can expand to 20 schools next year, she told Naomi. Maybe more, depending on how we structure the grants. Naomi nodded, but her mind was elsewhere. She was thinking about Trevor, about how pathetic he'd looked in that lobby. Once upon a time she'd loved him. Or thought she loved him. Now she just felt pity. Jordan drove her home, both of them quiet in the comfortable silence they'd developed. At her building he walked her to the door. Thank you, Naomi said. For being there tonight. For everything really. You've made this whole process easier. That's what friends do, Jordan said. Then hesitantly, is that still what we are? Friends? Naomi looked at him, really looked at him. Jordan, who'd supported her vision for the foundation without asking for anything in return. Jordan, who'd made her laugh when she wanted to cry. Jordan, who'd never once made her feel less than she was. I don't know, she said honestly. I know I care about you. I know I value your presence in my life. But I'm still figuring out who I am as a single person. It wouldn't be fair to start something when I'm still healing. I can wait, Jordan said simply. I'm not going anywhere. He kissed her cheek, gentle and respectful, then walked back to his car. Naomi watched him drive away, feeling something warm and hopeful bloom in her chest. Maybe someday she'd be ready for more. Maybe that someday would be with Jordan. But for now this was enough. A friend who respected her, a foundation making a difference, and a life that was finally, truly her own. Inside her apartment, Naomi kicked off her heels and changed into comfortable clothes. She made tea and sat by the window looking out at the city lights. Somewhere out there, Trevor was probably still angry, still bitter. But that was his problem, not hers. She'd spent 5 years trying to fix him, trying to save him from himself. She was done with that. Some people had to save themselves or they'd never learn the lesson. Robert's letter was still tucked in her desk drawer. Naomi pulled it out and read it again as she'd done many times over the past 6 months. Don't let guilt or obligation tie you to people who don't value you. She'd finally learned that lesson. She'd finally stepped into the freedom Robert had given her. And for the first time in years, Naomi Brooks felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. 1 year after the divorce, Naomi stood in the same hotel ballroom where the first gala had been held. But now, instead of 300 guests, there were 500. The foundation had grown beyond her wildest dreams. 20 schools now had fully funded art programs. The Community Arts Center had expanded into the neighboring building. 30 students were attending college on foundation scholarships. And the media attention had inspired 3 other organizations to start similar programs in different cities. Hard to believe it's only been a year, Sharon said, appearing at Naomi's side. Feels like we've been doing this forever. Good forever or bad forever? Definitely good. Sharon smiled. We've received over 200 new grant applications for next year. We'll have to expand the staff to process them all. Naomi nodded, scanning the crowd. She recognized most of the faces now. Returning donors, partner organizations, teachers whose schools had benefited from their grants. New faces too, drawn by the foundation's growing reputation. Jordan was across the room talking to a group of young artists. He'd become an unofficial ambassador for the foundation, his passion and eloquence convincing even skeptical donors to contribute. The community center's expansion had been so successful that 2 other centers had approached them about replicating the model. Over the past year, Naomi's relationship with Jordan had deepened slowly, carefully. They'd moved beyond friendship into something more, but without rushing. They had dinner twice a week now. They'd taken a weekend trip to the mountains, sharing a cabin but separate bedrooms. They'd kissed on New Year's Eve, a moment that felt both significant and natural. "I'm not trying to replace what you had," Jordan had told her one evening. "I'm not trying to be a rebound or a replacement. I just want to be in your life, whatever that looks like." "I want you in my life too," Naomi had admitted. "But I need to go slow. I need to be sure. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." And he hadn't. Through foundation stress and media attention and even another encounter with Trevor outside a grocery store, Jordan had been steady, supportive, never demanding more than she was ready to give. Across the ballroom, Naomi saw her mother and sister. Her mother had finally accepted the inheritance story, though she still seemed uncomfortable with the amount of money involved. Rachel, on the other hand, had embraced it fully. She'd quit her nursing job to become the foundation's volunteer coordinator, discovering a passion for nonprofit work she'd never known existed. "Naomi," a voice said behind her. "Wonderful event as always." She turned to find Mr. Harrison, looking distinguished in his tuxedo. "Thank you for coming. And for everything you've done this year." "My pleasure. Robert would be proud of what you've built." He gestured toward the stage. "Almost time for your speech." Naomi made her way to the podium as Sharon introduced her. The applause was warm, welcoming. She looked out at the assembled guests and felt a surge of gratitude for everyone who'd made this possible. "1 year ago," she began, "I stood at this podium and told you about a dream. A dream of making arts education accessible to every student, regardless of their financial circumstances. Tonight, I'm thrilled to report that we're turning that dream into reality." The screen behind her lit up with a video montage. Students painting, sculpting, dancing, making music. Teachers crying happy tears. Parents thanking the foundation at school events. Scholarship recipients accepting their college admissions. This year we've helped over 5,000 students. 5,000 young people who now have supplies, instruction, and encouragement to pursue their artistic passions. We've saved programs that were facing elimination. We've created new opportunities where none existed. Naomi's voice grew stronger. But we're not done. Not even close. She clicked to the next slide, showing the foundation's goals for the coming year. "With your continued support, we plan to reach 50 schools and double our scholarship program. We're launching a teacher training initiative to help educators integrate arts into all subjects. And we're partnering with 3 universities to study the long-term impact of arts education on student success." The audience responded with enthusiastic applause. Naomi continued, detailing specific programs and outcomes, sharing success stories and future plans. She'd gotten much better at public speaking over the past year, more comfortable in this role she'd never imagined for herself. After the speech, the usual receiving line formed. Donors wanting to talk, students wanting to share their gratitude, teachers seeking advice. Naomi worked through them all with practiced grace, though her feet ached in her heels and she was looking forward to the quiet of her apartment. An older woman approached, someone Naomi didn't recognize. She was elegantly dressed in a silver gown, her white hair styled perfectly. "Ms. Brooks, I'm Patricia Patterson, Trevor's mother." Naomi froze. She hadn't seen or heard from any of the Patterson family since the divorce. "Mrs. Patterson, I'm surprised to see you here." "I'm sure you are." Patricia's expression was carefully neutral. "May we speak privately for a moment?" They moved to a quiet corner of the ballroom, away from the crowd. Elena materialized nearby, always alert, but gave them space. "I wanted to tell you something," Patricia said. "Something I should have said a year ago. I'm sorry." "Sorry for what?" "For how we treated you. For how my son treated you. For not seeing your worth until it was too late." Patricia's composure cracked slightly. "Robert saw it. He tried to tell me, but I was too proud, too caught up in what I thought Trevor should be married to." "What changed?" Naomi asked. "Watching you this past year. Reading about the foundation, seeing what you're doing with Robert's money." Patricia gestured around the ballroom. "You're honoring his memory in ways Trevor never could have. You understood what was important to him, even though he barely spoke to you." "I just tried to do something meaningful," Naomi said quietly. "You've done more than that. You've proven that Robert made the right choice." Patricia pulled an envelope from her purse. "I wrote you a letter months ago but never had the courage to send it. I'm giving it to you now. Naomi accepted the envelope but didn't open it. How is Trevor? Working. Learning humility, though it's a slow process. Patricia's expression was sad. He took the entry-level job his uncle offered. He's living in a small apartment, managing his own expenses for the first time in his life. It's been good for him even if he doesn't see it yet. I hope he finds his way, Naomi said and meant it. She didn't feel angry at Trevor anymore, just distant pity for a man who'd lost so much because he couldn't see what mattered. So do I. Patricia paused. I also wanted you to know that I've established a matching grant program. Any donations made to the foundation this year, I'll match up to $5 million. Naomi's eyes widened. Mrs. Patterson, that's incredibly generous, but you don't have to. I want to. It's the least I can do to support what you're building. And please call me Patricia. After Patricia left, Naomi opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter on expensive stationery. Dear Naomi, I owe you an apology that's a year overdue. I treated you poorly during your marriage to my son, viewing you as beneath our family when the truth was that you were above us all. You worked tirelessly to support Trevor when he gave you every reason to leave. You showed grace and dignity in the face of my coldness. You loved my son when he was unlovable, and you deserved so much better than what you received. Watching you build this foundation has been humbling. You've taken Robert's gift and multiplied its impact far beyond anything he could have imagined. You've proven that character matters more than breeding, that integrity matters more than social standing. I hope someday you can forgive us. I hope someday we can know each other properly, not as in-laws but as people who both loved Robert in our own ways. With respect and deep regret, Patricia Patterson. Naomi folded the letter carefully and tucked it back in the envelope. Forgiveness. She'd been thinking about that concept a lot lately. Not forgiveness in the sense of excusing what had happened, but forgiveness as letting go of anger, of moving forward without bitterness weighing her down. She'd forgiven Trevor, she realized. Not because he deserved it, but because holding on to anger was exhausting. He'd lost so much through his own actions. That was punishment enough. Jordan found her in the quiet corner. Everything okay? Patricia Patterson seemed intense. She apologized and offered a $5 million matching grant. Jordan whistled low. That changes our entire budget for next year. It does. Naomi smiled up at him. Come on, let's enjoy the rest of the evening. We've earned it. They danced together as the orchestra played, Naomi's head resting on Jordan's shoulder. Around them, donors and supporters celebrated the foundation's success. The ballroom was filled with light, laughter, and hope. At midnight, after the last guest had left, Naomi and Jordan stood on the hotel's terrace, looking out at the city. The air was cool, spring beginning to give way to summer. I have something to tell you, Jordan said, taking her hand. The community center board wants to expand our model to 5 more cities. They want me to oversee the expansion. Jordan, that's wonderful. Naomi squeezed his hand. You've worked so hard for this. I have. But here's the thing. It would mean a lot of travel, at least for the first year. I'd be gone several weeks each month, setting up new centers, training staff. He turned to face her fully. I wanted to talk to you about it before I said yes. To see how you felt about it. How I feel about it? Naomi was touched that he'd considered her opinion. This is your career, your passion. You should absolutely say yes. Even if it means less time together? We'll figure it out. Video calls, weekend visits when you're in town, making the most of the time we do have. Naomi smiled. Besides, I'll be busy too. 50 schools next year, remember? We'll both be building something important. Jordan pulled her close. Have I mentioned lately that you're incredible? Not in the last hour or so. He kissed her and it felt like coming home. Not in the desperate, clingy way she'd felt with Trevor, trying to hold on to something that was already slipping away. This felt solid, real, built on mutual respect and shared values. I love you, Jordan said when they pulled apart. I've wanted to say that for months, but I was waiting for the right moment. I love you too, Naomi replied and realized it was true. Somewhere over the past year, amid foundation work and personal growth, she'd fallen in love with this kind, passionate man who'd never asked her to be anything other than herself. They stood together on the terrace, watching the city lights twinkle. Somewhere out there, Trevor was in his small apartment, probably still bitter about what he'd lost. Patricia was in her mansion working on her own version of redemption. Students were sleeping peacefully, their futures a little brighter because of the foundation's work. And Naomi was here with a man who loved her, doing work that mattered, living a life she'd built from the ashes of her worst experience. What are you thinking about? Jordan asked. About Robert, Naomi said. About how he gave me more than money. He gave me permission to value myself, to believe I deserved better. He gave me freedom. He gave you an opportunity, Jordan corrected gently. But you're the one who took it and turned it into something beautiful. That's all you, Naomi. That's your strength, your vision, your heart. Our vision now, she said. The foundation, the community center, all of it. We're building it together. Together, Jordan agreed, pulling her close again. As they kissed under the stars, Naomi felt something she hadn't felt in years, complete contentment. Not the desperate happiness of trying to convince herself things were fine when they weren't. Not the relief of escaping something terrible. Just genuine, deep satisfaction with where she was and who she'd become. She'd started this journey broken and betrayed, with nothing but a studio apartment and a teacher's salary. Now she had purpose, love, and the means to change thousands of lives. The inheritance had been Robert's final gift, his way of showing that he'd seen her worth even when his own family couldn't. But what she'd done with that gift was all her own. She'd taken pain and transformed it into purpose. She'd taken betrayal and transformed it into beauty. Trevor had thrown her away, thinking she was worthless without him. Instead, she'd discovered she was worth more than he could ever imagine. And that was the best revenge of all, not getting even but getting better. Not destroying the person who hurt her, but building a life so full and meaningful that what he'd done didn't matter anymore. Naomi smiled into the night, grateful for every twist and turn that had brought her here. The bad marriage, the cruel divorce, the unexpected inheritance. All of it had been necessary to become the person she was now. Ready to go home? Jordan asked. Yes, Naomi said. I'm ready. They walked hand in hand through the empty ballroom, past tables still decorated with flowers, past the stage where she'd shared her vision. Everything they'd built together was represented in this room. Hope, opportunity, transformation. As they drove through the city, Naomi looked out the window at the passing buildings, the sleeping city, the world full of possibilities. Somewhere in that world were students who would benefit from the foundation's grants. Teachers who would be able to continue programs they loved. Young people whose lives would be changed by access to arts education. And somewhere in that world, maybe Trevor was finally learning his own lessons about what really mattered. Naomi hoped he was. She hoped he'd find his way eventually, not because she owed him anything, but because everyone deserved a chance at redemption if they were willing to work for it. But that was his journey, not hers. Her journey had brought her here, to a life of purpose and love, to work that made a difference, to a future that was bright with possibility. She'd taken Robert's final gift and turned it into something beautiful. She'd honored his memory by becoming the person he'd always believed she could be. And she'd proven to herself and everyone else that true worth had nothing to do with money or social standing. True worth came from character, from integrity, from how you treated others and what you chose to build with the opportunities life gave you. Naomi Brooks had built something extraordinary. And this was only the beginning.